Welcome to Brainstorm9000.
Greetings, Earthlings, and welcome to another episode of Brainstorm9000.
Says a person who we call Master McMaster.
That's me.
Because she is the master of all the McMasters and this podcast, and also decided to call herself a Master McMaster because she is a philosopher with a master's degree. Her real name is Jane McMaster.
Thank you for that introduction, Dr. Schultz.
Yes, my name is Dr. Schultz. I'm a psychiatrist. And I'm also the one and the only known to me human brain technologist.
Yes, and we have heard you mention this in passing before. If you're a regular listener to Brainstorm9000, you've heard this term maybe a couple times. And you've definitely heard some of Dr. Schultz's philosophy. So today we're going to talk more about that philosophy and really explore what it is, which is called brain technology.
Right. So I decided to add a word, human brain technology, because apparently someone in Europe already was talking about brain technology as it applies to computers, like trying to create technology for computers that is like a brain. So just to distinguish, brain technology is something that has to do with the brain that you, brains of the internet, have, minus the brains of computers that might be listening to us right now.
Yes, this is for humans only. Sorry, robots.
Right. So I feel that there is an enormous need for us to create a new specialty, which is called brain technology.
A new specialty in, like, medicine?
Yes.
Can you, okay, so we're going to get into all the details, but can you briefly describe for us what brain technology means?
Well, brain technology is a new approach to the way we approach a human being. In this model, I suggest a couple of innovative things. One, I suggest something that is very obvious to me and probably very obvious to you, I hope it is, that our main organ is the brain.
That is what I believe.
As you, Master McMaster, know, and some of the people who have been listening to us, we actually created a video in which I went literally around the world to quite a few countries and asked people what is the main organ of their body.
Yep.
Master McMaster saw this video. If you guys haven't seen the video, you might want to go on the YouTube channel, which is called BrainTech9000.
BrainTech9000.
On YouTube, and it's the first video posted there. And I think the second person in the video who is one of the identical twins in Italy, in Florence I met, says that it's his penis.
Ah.
The very first person on the video who is from the United States says it's heart, and then when I explain my position, decides that it's the brain. And then quite a few people are going to say on this video, and say it to me and probably to anybody, that actually the main organ is the heart.
Yeah, the
It's
heart is a popular one. Yeah, there were a bunch of different answers that you got.
Right. Like in Italy, a number of people, some of whom didn't make it to the video, say it's their eyes, because apparently in the Italian language, if you want to say that something doesn't taste good, you'll say it's ugly. That's what people in Italy explained to me. But to come back to our thing, first of all, our eyes, as one of the scientists we interviewed on the same video explains, is basically an outgrowth of the brain. It's a part of the brain. But without getting too technical here, I say to people, if you don't have your brain, what do you need your heart for? And what do you need the rest of your body for? I spoke also to one philosopher, happened to be not you, Master McMaster, who actually told me, he's a professor in New York, that he teaches his students that there is no main organ, that the entire human being is important, and you cannot distinguish. It could be true, but for the purposes of understanding what's going on, as the main principle of brain technology, I suggest that our main organ is the brain. And the rest of the body is utilized by the brain.
It's like secondary?
Well, it serves a purpose of providing our brain with an ability to function the best it possibly can.
Right. So when you say primary organ or like the most important organ.
Right.
What do you mean by that?
Without this organ, we are not human. Like if you remove the brain, or if the brain doesn't function, we become. You can call it a vegetable. You can say whatever you want. Animals also, without their brains, cannot function, with a few exceptions. Like for example, during sex in praying mantis, a female bites off the head of the partner. Apparently, sex is better. I'm kidding you. About whether the sex is better or not, I can't say anything.
That's for nutritional purposes. And the partner dies, I believe.
Well, yeah, if you don't have your head, you die. Right. So we can dance around this issue, and I can try to argue my case in front of the court of the brains of the internet that, you can transplant basically by now any organ you can possibly imagine, except for eyes, which are part of the brain, right? There is an artificial ear. There is an artificial heart and heart transplants.
You can get an eye transplant, can't you?
I don't know about that. I doubt it.
I think you can.
I doubt it very much, because otherwise we wouldn't have blind people. Or we wouldn't have people with one eye. But whatever. So brain cannot be transplanted yet. And I know that there have been many projects involving an idea to transplant the brain, including transplanting a head of one of the literally Russian from Moscow computer engineers.
Oh yeah, I read an article about that the other day, or I don't know if it's the same person, but he recently backed out.
Right.
Because before it was kind of like he didn't really have much to live for, and now then he like fell in love and he has a family now, so he's like, not worth the risk.
Well, but if you transplant somebody's head to another body, then it's this head's body, or the head is the body's head. So whatever. So listen, we need to appreciate the fact that it's the most important organ. At least that's where I'm coming from.
All right. So why do we need to appreciate this?
Because it became probably the most affected organ for the last probably 50 years, since the level of stress has been rising exponentially. Exponentially, for people who don't know, can you explain the word exponentially?
A lot.
Exponentially means, it rises progressively. It's not step by step. Each step is multiplied, or as Elon Musk would say, by a lot. About 12 years ago, 11 years ago, we didn't have an iPhone. iPhone X means 10, right? So it came out like last year.
Yeah, oh man, it's so...
So no iPhone 11, 12 years ago. The internet has been around since, let's say, late 60s. I was born in 1955. I grew up in a situation even without a TV in Russia. So TV was designed in the 30s, probably, interestingly, by probably Russians, but didn't make it until later after World War II. Our brain is extremely stressed.
So, if I'm understanding what you're saying, then up until maybe 50, 60, 70 years ago,
right,
the human brain across around the world,
right,
was accustomed to a very different way of life, to a different input, a different way of getting information, a different way of processing things, and just a different kind of lifestyle. And technology is the main difference that has changed all of this for us.
Technology and pollution. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's a complicated situation because not only technology itself affects us, but also it places certain demands on our brain that we didn't have before. Like, for example, I went to school, and I'm not trying to say it's good or bad, but I had to learn how to write, first with a pencil, and then with a pen that I had to dip in ink, right?
Oh, wow.
Right.
You had a quill?
Right, yeah. Later on, we had access to fountain pens because they thought that they spoil your handwriting. I still have a horrible handwriting. So nowadays, people grow up typing on the computer. I've seen many times infants, toddlers, with phones in their hands and iPads.
Yeah, it's so weird to me. I got a flip phone when I was in 8th grade.
Right.
Which at the time was ooh, I feel so cool.
Right.
And now it's like the norm for like a 6-year-old, 7-year-old to have a smartphone.
Well, I didn't know that because my children are a little bit older than you, but, millennials. Yeah. So this is one thing. And so you have to perform different tasks. And I'm not going to say this stupid thing that people say using different parts of your brain. We don't know that, right? We can, if we have the time, talk about my view on this, but it doesn't matter at this point. And also the input, the visual input, is different now because now you look at the screen. I mean, how many people, just to jump ahead, use special protective, let's say, blue haze glasses when they work on their computers or type on their iPhones or
This is something we've heard you talk about before, too.
Yeah, but very few.
And, well, I am proud to say
Right.
that I recently got glasses with this thing, probably just because I've heard you talk about it so much.
Well, good for you. And I recently went to Moscow and actually got the glasses there that are even more advanced. They are not blue. That there is new technology. I'm pretty sure it exists in the United States. Just for me, it was cheaper and faster. Whatever. So, also, you and I are sitting here in our little studio wearing headphones because we are recording a podcast. Even podcasts didn't exist for a very long time. So radio came for, right? So we are recording using the microphones and using our headphones. But most importantly, our listeners are listening to us on their devices using the headphones. Mm-hmm. Remember, at least in the movies from the 70s, people used to walk with large transistors and, playing very loud music on the street.
Oh, do you mean like giant boom boxes?
Boom boxes, right.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't seen boom boxes that much anymore. Maybe
No,
when I
but
go
they
to the
look
Central
so
Park.
cool.
Well, they look so cool, but now
Yeah.
your and my voice with my disturbing accent and everything else that we consume through our ears comes through the earphones. Rock and roll and electronic music began, let's say, in the 60s. I used to play in the band. I had my own band. I basically yelled at people and told them what to do and played keyboards.
Nice.
Right, I'm not that gifted, but I was sitting always by the bass speaker, which was very loud, and my right ear does not hear as well as it used to because of that experience.
Yeah.
Life also has become significantly more sedentary because people are glued to their computers. So there are many, many, many different things. And life is very stressful now. People say that a lack of human interaction, because now a lot of people in your age group and younger communicate mostly by texting. I know that...
to me, that's less stressful. What's more stressful is communicating in person.
Right. So our brain is exposed to a totally different milieu, right? Also, what's happening with the news, with the media, it's kind of like a very interesting process because media gives people significantly more access to what's going on. Before you needed to read a newspaper, you listen to the news on the radio, then the news appeared, then somebody came up with an idea of CNN, now we have multiple stations. And because we have so much access, including on our phones, we are significantly more involved in consuming mostly disturbing information.
Yeah, it's like a constant stream of like all of this content and all of this like stimulation.
Right. So even, porn went from magazines to movies that people had to rent to streaming all over the internet. So children, for example, are exposed to a lot of very graphic situations, not only porn, violence,
Video games.
The brain needs help.
Right. So the brain needs help. So why do we need brain technology? Wouldn't we just go to like a psychiatrist or like a therapist or something?
An interesting question. I'm so glad you asked me in your infinite wisdom, Master McMaster. The truth is that first and foremost, very few people would even consider going to see a psychiatrist because a public perception still is that if you go to a psychiatrist, it means you're crazy, right? you probably wouldn't have any problem to do it. But in my office, I see people day in and day out, very intelligent, who tell me, I've been depressed for many years, since college, but I always felt weird about going to see a psychiatrist.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly not as stigmatized as it was maybe like 20 years ago.
In the United States.
In the United States.
Yes. Elsewhere.
But it's still, I wouldn't say it's so much of a shameful thing as it is kind of an embarrassing thing.
Right.
Because it means that there's something wrong with you, that you need help. And people are afraid of being perceived as like crazy. And even so, I've always been very open about my mental health and all the, help that I seek for my mental health.
Right.
And even I have just been like recently thinking like, oh, I would never want to tell like an employer that I was seeing a psychiatrist.
Of course.
That would be embarrassing.
Right.
They would think I was maybe crazy or that I couldn't do a job,
Yeah. And going to a psychologist by a lot of people is perceived as basically an endless story when you are consistently and continuously rehashing the same thing again and again. And some people feel that psychologists give them advice, which is inaccurate. So going to a neurologist, as I said many times before, usually in people's minds is connected to receiving assessment and treatment for epilepsy, some kind of seizures,
maybe
Parkinson.
Like Parkinson. Yeah, like something serious,
right,
where they really get in there.
Right. So one of the things that brain technology would do is to remove the stigma and actually also to reach up to the demands of modern people and also offer them access to what they want access to, data-driven approach to brain health.
You just said a lot of things
Right.
in that, just packed in that one sentence. So I have a few questions.
Okay.
What do you mean that like brain technology can break down this stigma?
Well, brain technology doesn't have this archaic, scary name of psychiatry. Brain technology tells you, look, you have an organ, which I'm telling you, that's how I feel. So we have many organs. So our brain, although considered by me and let's say by you and a number of people we interviewed, right, to be a main organ is still an organ which requires at least as much attention as everything else.
Yeah, and we really don't seem to pay that much attention to it.
To the main organ. So people say, oh, we have a white elephant standing in the room. So guess what? We have a gray brain sitting inside of our head, right? And people take care of the way they look. They brush their teeth, which are located in their head, right? Some people, male and female, also pay a lot of attention to cosmetics, right?
Working out.
Yeah, people shave. No, I'm talking about cosmetics like, to the face, which is located on the head, to their hair, which is located on the head. People cut their hair. But how many people do assessments of what's going on with the function of what's inside of their head? Like, I feel out of breath. My pulse is too fast. My back hurts. But how many times have we heard, I have a problem with my cognition, and I have a problem with my brain. The best you can hear is I have headaches.
Very little I've
Yeah, I
ever
have
heard that.
headaches. Well, I don't sleep. Let me take something over the counter. So
Yeah, or like, yeah, you don't sleep. Yeah, drink a bunch of coffee, or
right. So let's imagine that you have a computer which outperforms any computer that exists on Earth by a lot, as one of my favorite people, Elon Musk, would say. And nobody pays attention. Like people who have laptops and cell phones pay more attention to them than they pay to their brain. My iPhone has a special case. Some people choose to have iPhones without the case because they look elegant, but they do.
It's a stupid decision.
No, but they take care. So what I'm saying to you people, I mean, come on. The time has come for us to really pay attention to the brain. I'm not suggesting, actually, at this point, that we need to come up with something that doesn't exist yet. It would be nice, but let's start from just putting together a system that provides us with data-based approach to our brain health gives us data that we can process together, which is another very important thing, because in old models, you basically come to a doctor, the doctor talks to you, if this doctor happens to be a psychiatrist or a psychologist, maybe conducts some cockamamie test that you can't even understand, and then in quotes, big quotes, explains to you what's going on, and then either prescribes medication with either a conversation or a short conversation. Not too much data is processed during this time, because it's not available, seriously, or if it's available, like, it's not geared to that. And this is archaic. We do have technology today, and we'll talk about it hopefully a little bit later in a few minutes, that allow us to start tapping into our brain health and see where we are today, whether anything needs to be done, and then do things even before we consider medications or instead of medications.
So can you clarify a little bit what you mean by brain health? Like, when you're talking about brain health, are you talking about things like depression and, schizophrenia or something? Is it bigger than that? Is it less than that? Is it different?
Well, it's much bigger than that. We have about 1% of the population on Earth that suffer from schizophrenia, regardless of the culture and the country they live in. So it's a terrible illness. 1% is a lot of people, but still there is 99 left who don't have schizophrenia. Mm-hmm. So of course it's bigger than schizophrenia. Statistics tell us that over 60% of females experienced at least one episode of depression throughout their lifetime. And they say that in this way, because about men we don't know that much. As a man, I can tell you we are kind of stupid. We don't go to doctors as much as women do. So let's say 60% of the population in so-called civilized countries, meaning countries where people are exposed to significantly more stress from the environment, 60%. But still, it's not everybody. So brain technology is larger than that. What about people who have stress? How many of this we have?
Well, isn't stress just like a part of life that you just deal with? Do you need to go to a doctor for that?
Well, stress that our brain is used to for millions and millions of years of evolution is very different from the level of stress we are exposed to, as we discussed before, in the last 50 to 100 years. It's completely different. Just think about it. In the last about 150 years, we received an ability to travel by air. Prior to that, to travel using trains and later cars. Radio was discovered and developed. Phones were discovered and developed. TV, and then computers came along. And now cell phones, smartphones. I totally agree with Elon Musk, as you can see, one of my favorite people, who I heard, I think, saying somewhere that we are basically becoming cyborgs already. If you take subway or any public transportation or go to the street of New York, almost every single person holds a cell phone.
Yep.
Right. So we need to start doing something to process with each person who is interested and willing where they are. Like, for example, people go to the gym, right? Because there is an understanding, thanks to Jack LaLanne, we had a special podcast about this, who developed first gyms in the United States and probably in the world, the way they are right now. People now exercise. People watch what they eat, right? But people don't watch their brains at all. They do whatever.
Right. Okay, so are you saying then that brain technology could be for someone, not just for the kind of people who might see a psychiatrist, if you have depression or something?
Exactly. No, it's for anybody. We are supposed to have a physical, and we are supposed to go to a dentist twice a year, and women are supposed to go to a OBGYN, and men are supposed to go to a urologist, but they don't, of course. So this is the same thing. You come for a physical, for your brain. So somebody can assess what's going on, show you the data, and together with you see what needs to be done to maintain your brain health. Because guess what? If you are a toddler and you've been holding a cell phone in front of your eyes, you are doing something to your eyes. Probably it's not a big deal, but probably it is. And you are doing something to your brain, right? I don't want to scare people, and I don't need to because everybody is scared enough, but levels of violence, inappropriate crazy behavior, the frequency with which people get mental illness, diagnosable, including depression, are rising. New Jersey, the state of New Jersey, and I'm not going to make a mistake here, is country number 1 in the world when it comes to how many children have autistic disorder. Nobody understands why.
Really?
Yeah, nobody understands why.
Weird.
Yeah. So we do have many issues. So people can tell me, why don't psychiatrists address them? Well, because a discipline of psychiatry is designed and conceived in a totally different way. And just hiring more psychiatrists, right, is impossible, and re-educating or educating the existing ones is not going to do justice to people, because it still means that you have to go to someone who's geared towards diagnosing you with mental illness. So I suggest just to create a specialty that also, while utilizing what psychiatrists and psychologists and neurologists know, also has a holistic approach to the brain, perceiving it as a part of our body. Yes, it's in charge, it regulates the body, but it still needs power supply, right? It still needs like fuel, right? So, digestive system, cardiovascular system are important. We need to take them into consideration. The brain floats are surrounded by different liquids, so hormones are important. I mean, we need to assess the person in their entirety, right?
Okay.
And then develop an action plan of what to do. So that's what brain technology is all about.
Why do you need to look at like the rest of someone's body if the issue is like in their brain? Like why would you care about someone's heart or like their digestion or something if the issue is maybe something with like neurotransmitters or something?
Well, neurotransmitters, schmulotransmitters. There is significantly more to the brain than just neurotransmitters, and this is another thing that we have to start looking at, because if neurons communicated with each other just using chemistry or signals that we perceive like at 30 hertz maximum doing EEG, you and I wouldn't be talking. Of course, there is significantly more to it. And are we looking? I don't know. Maybe Elon Musk is looking, but no one else that I know of. But just to come back to your particular question, brain cannot exist by itself. It needs to be supplied with nutrients. It needs to be able to move around, so our body gives that. We need to multiply, so the brain cannot multiply itself, right? I'm like making it ridiculous here, like almost a caricature, because it might sound to you as if brain is like a creature that lives inside of our body.
Yeah.
And some people say that, but I don't know whether I agree with that. But brain by itself is helpless and cannot do anything. It needs to hear, so it needs the peripheral devices to work well, which are many. It's not only our eyes and our ears. We have a sense of smell, we have a sense of taste, we have a sense of touch. There are also proprioceptors, receptors that we are not aware of, that constantly feed back the signals from our inner body. Everything has to be in order. Our digestive system has to work well, otherwise nutrients are not going to come up. The immune system needs to work, otherwise the brain is not going to be protected from infections. Blood has to flow to provide the brain with nutrients and to remove all the garbage from the brain because it circulates, right? There are a lot of things that need to happen for the brain. So yes, we need to assess the brain function itself, but a brain technologist, the way I see it, also needs to be aware of everything that's going on. But it's not a family physician, right? The goal is not for the brain technologist to treat every single element. It's just you do the assessment the best you can, and you develop a game plan. So if we were to see that everything is fine, the brain is doing okay, we can develop a plan of how to maintain it. That could include still doing some neurobiofeedback, or even doing as little as just taking the time off from all the devices, not plugging your earphones all the time in your ears, using special glasses. Unplugging, yeah. Or it could be that we say, well, your thyroid is out of whack. Let's send you to an endocrinologist. Or, you know what, you do have signs of depression. So either you need to go to a psychiatrist or we can offer you certain technological approaches to that. So complex assessment, developing the game plan, and then quarterbacking what needs to happen in order to maintain brain health. Kind of like tricking people, to be honest, into basically staying healthy. Right?
Okay, and it's not just then brain health, right? It's your whole body health?
Well, we developed through years of people thinking about it and writing about it a clear understanding that the ancients had, that we have to have a holistic approach, right? So it's an old theme played again and again and again, that we should be wholesome, everything is connected, but it's kind of silly not to admit that something is ruling the process. Like, for example, you cannot open business and just let it run. Somebody has to run it, right? So somebody has to be a CEO or whatever you call them. Somebody has to do the finances. I mean, the roles have to be divided. So yes, our body is one whole body, but it has a command center, a CEO, which is our brain, right? And then it has other parts which are equally important, but the CEO has to be happy, because if the CEO does not exist, business falls apart, cannot function by itself.
Like if you put someone in a coma,
Right.
then like there's part of their brain that might still be regulating certain things, and then, you know, we can have machinery that helps them do other things.
Right.
But if you cut someone's head off,
Right.
they're useless. Like, I mean, they're dead.
Yes.
Like everything else shuts down.
Yes, although in many cultures, in many religions, heart is considered to be what defines whether a person is dead or alive. And I recently actually read an article that says that years ago people conducted an experiment, and it turns out that after a person is dead, the brain still remains functional for a short period of time, up to 10 minutes.
This.
Yeah. So maybe there is a, software of dying runs out. So somebody, runs through the tunnel, somebody sees the reality. So I don't know. I mean, as you know, I believe in reincarnation, so it's difficult for me to talk about it. But that's a different story. So what I'm suggesting is to take a new, fresh look at our brain health using what we already have. And once we start doing it, I'm pretty sure people who are interested to develop more and more to help with this will come along.
Okay.
Of course, ideally, once the tunnel is built under LA, maybe Elon Musk will become interested. And, I love the guy, and, I never met him. But I think people of this magnitude, of this capacity of make things done, ought to start looking at our brain health. It's crucial.
Right. Okay. So what you're saying so far makes sense to me.
Okay.
Brains should be healthy. I mean, they control everything we do.
Right.
They are us to a certain extent. But what you're suggesting with brain technology sounds like a big undertaking. It sounds like, looking at every part of your body and, doing a lot of tests and stuff. So if you're not someone who has like a crippling mental illness, why would you bother with this?
Because you do have a crippling illness that is growing inside of you. I hate to say that, because you are exposed to a level of stress that is, I dare to say, non-human. A lot of things that we are subjects to are non-human. A very clear example is, let's say, IV heroin. That's a non-human experience. People never experience this level of pleasure, and once they're exposed to it in a very artificial way, it's impossible to turn away from it. But until, as we suggested together, 50, 60, 100 years before, our brains have never been exposed to what they're exposed nowadays. And actually, it's not such a huge undertaking. What I'm suggesting, just to come down to how it works, is this. So how it works in this office, for example, if somebody expresses a desire to have it done, then they would come in and they would be initially evaluated by a person who collects their history and decides together with them what kind of testing needs to be done. And this testing collected in one place does not include anything that has not existed for quite a long time, at least for a few, decades. Sophisticated blood work that looks at all the aspects that are important for the brain. Saliva genetic testing, which is a once-a-lifetime event, which assesses what medications are better or worse as far as the capacity of this particular person's liver to process. Neuropsychological testing is done, which allows, in a sophisticated way, to assess what's really going with a person's emotional life and even hardware of the brain, so to speak. Quantitative EEG is another super sophisticated method when it's computerized recording of the electric activity of the brain. Standard, it's called 1020, so it's 19 electrodes. And then sent to the cloud and processed against normals. And this database does exist for years. And then in color is presented, and we can see together where the problems are. And then if a person wants to, they can receive treatment, which includes psychotherapy and medication if that's what they want and that's what is indicated, but also includes a neurobiofeedback, includes, if it's necessary, TMS, which is transcranial magnetic stimulation for severe depression, heart rate variability training, which is computerized for anxiety disorders. A lot of people have anxiety disorders. So neurobiofeedback helps with attention deficit disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, traumatic brain injury, anxiety. Heart rate variability helps with different kinds of anxiety disorder, even could be helpful for some forms of PTSD. So a lot of things can be done. The monitoring of success of treatment also can be done using data-based approach. Follow-up testing, right? Also, we would teach people what to do to maintain their brain health, and we would pay attention to the rest of their body. That's the beginning. What is going to grow out of it, hopefully, is a much more sophisticated way to process what's going on with people. There are many, many things that I did not mention yet, but we need to start somewhere, put together a system. And in this office, we are trying, so to speak, to prove the concept.
Okay, I mean, all of this sounds like very positive. I'm liking the vibe. I have a question though.
Right.
From what you're describing, like in this modern environment, like pretty much everyone who lives in like a Western civilization,
Right,
is exposed to too much stress to the point where they might benefit from brain technology.
correct.
So if everyone is super stressed,
Right.
then what kind of mark do we have? Like, what's the goal for normal? Like, how do we even know what that looks like?
How do you know what normal is?
Yeah.
I suggest a very simple idea. If a person is happy, is able to enjoy life, doesn't have any crippling issues emotionally, mentally, cognitively, can participate in all the pleasurable activities and be an active part of the society. And for God's sake, we need to understand that the world now is evolving into a world where everybody and everything is connected, and we are a part of a very big organism which is called Earth, and we want to help. So if all these components are there, the only thing that I would suggest to such a person is to try to see whether there is anything they need to be doing to maintain this level of health. If somebody is unhappy and dysfunctional from, first of all, their point of view, then it's not, in quotes, normal. So to me, normal is when a person is happy, go-lucky, has a fulfilling, happy life. Is a person who shoots up 10 to 20 bags to 50 bags of heroin a day happy? No, they're not. They're not happy because they're chasing a high that doesn't exist anymore.
Okay, yeah. So then what is your definition of happiness that you're basing this like idea of normal?
I wish that people would be just familiar to a concept of eudaimonia.
Ah, yes, we return to eudaimonia.
Can you repeat it for people who did not listen, didn't have a chance to listen to our eudaimonia episode?
Yes, eudaimonia is an ancient Greek term that refers to human flourishing, or basically the state of being happy, healthy, and like thriving.
Right. And as you said before, one of the famous philosophers suggested that eudaimonia actually is achieved in the process, right?
Right, that eudaimonia is an activity.
Right. So when eudaimonia is achieved, when you are on the quest of achieving something that is important to you.
What if for some people that's heroin?
Right. Well, no brain technology for them, because if somebody doesn't want help, they can't receive it. And I would like to end this conversation with one of my favorite Chinese sayings that I'm going to be interpreted like this. If your cup is full, it has no room for more water. Right? So
that
if somebody
is true.
if somebody already knows what they want and don't want to be open to any particular suggestion, that's fine. But I respectfully suggest that at least the concept that I'm offering is meaningful. And I will be constantly looking for people to help out any way they can.
Yeah, what I really like about this concept is that it really encourages people to be a little bit more self-reflective.
Yes.
Not just about like, I mean, oh, am I crazy? Am I
Right.
like insanely depressed? No, it's
Right.
like, you know, how is your day-to-day life going?
Right.
How could it be better?
Right.
And how could you do something to like optimize your, quality of life?
Yes. Yes. And I'm offering a particular system that I think is workable, makes sense. So I suggest to you, brains of the internet and others, please keep your brain open.
To brain technology.
Goodbye. Our thanks.
Goodbye. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Brainstorm 9000. If you like us, love us, or marginally tolerate us, hey, go ahead and subscribe, rate, and give us a review on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever the hell you listen to your podcasts.